The Supreme Court of the United States has issued a rule that gives police greater control over you the moment your vehicle is pulled over, and this was a 9-0 decision, meaning every justice agreed. Quick question before we go further. Because what I'm about to break down could stop you from making one mistake that turns a routine traffic stop into a serious problem. So, if you're not subscribed yet, press that button now so you don't miss future legal updates. Here's what's happening and why so many gun owners keep getting caught off guard. People often think, I'm legal, so I'm safe. But on the side of the road, legal does not always mean simple. It does not always mean hands-off. And it definitely does not mean no frisk. If you carry a firearm in your car, you need to understand what officers are allowed to do during a stop and what you should do to keep the situation calm. The case everyone needs to understand is Arizona versus Johnson. It isn't new, but it still controls how traffic stops work today. Courts still rely on it, and officers still follow it. The court explained that a traffic stop temporarily seizes both the driver and every passenger. That matters because many people assume passengers are free to leave. They are not, at least not while the stop is ongoing. It also matters because the court ruled that an officer may frisk a person during a traffic stop if there is reasonable suspicion that the person is armed and dangerous. Let's simplify that. A seizure here does not mean you are under arrest. It means you are not free to end the interaction and walk away. The stop is active, and the officer controls the scene. That includes you, your passengers, and your movements. So if you carry in a vehicle, the stop is no longer just about a broken tail light. It can quickly shift into a situation focused on safety, control, and weapons. Now here's the part that frustrates many people. The rule does not say gun equals guilt, but it does allow officers to take safety precautions. And if you don't understand those precautions, you can easily talk yourself into a frisk, or worse, a charge like resisting or obstruction. That's why this matters even if you have a permit. That's why it matters even if your state allows permitless carry. And that's why it matters even if you're only a passenger. So let's break this into clear sections with realistic examples. Imagine yourself in these situations because they happen every day. I also want you to recognize the mistakes people commonly make. Most of them are completely avoidable. First major point, during a lawful traffic stop, the officer can control everyone inside the vehicle. This idea connects to other rulings as well. Officers can order the driver out of the car. Officers can order passengers out of the car. And the passenger is considered seized just like the driver from the moment the vehicle pulls over. Arizona v. Johnson essentially ties these ideas together and confirms that the stop applies to everyone, while allowing officers to take safety measures during the encounter. Many people think that if the officer starts talking about something unrelated, the interaction becomes voluntary. That assumption is a trap. In Arizona v. Johnson, the officer asked questions unrelated to the original reason for the stop. The questions involved possible gang activity. A lower court tried to label that conversation as consensual, like casual small talk. The Supreme Court made it clear that it was still part of the traffic stop. The passenger remained seized, even though the topic changed. That leads to the second major point. Officers may ask unrelated questions, but they cannot extend the stop without justification. This is where confusion often happens. Police can ask, "Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Do you have any weapons?" But that does not give officers unlimited time to search for problems. There are legal limits preventing a stop from being prolonged without additional facts. The key idea is simple. Questions can occur, but the stop still has to progress normally. So what does that mean if you carry a firearm? It means you should expect the weapon question. It means you should expect officers to watch your hands carefully. And it means you should assume the officer is thinking about safety first, not your permit first. If you treat the stop like a relaxed conversation, you can unintentionally create the exact safety concerns that lead to a frisk. Third major point, the standard for a frisk is armed and dangerous, not armed and polite, and not armed and legal. A frisk is a quick pat-down of outer clothing for weapons. It is supposed to stay limited. It is not intended to become a deep search for drugs or other evidence. The key issue is what triggers it. The officer must have reasonable suspicion that the person is armed and dangerous. Here's where real-world situations get complicated. A dangerous can be built from small observations, fast movements, hidden hands ignoring instructions, an angry tone, a nervous passenger, a driver repeatedly reaching someone saying, "I have a gun," while touching their waistband, even if you are not dangerous. Those behaviors can appear dangerous during a tense roadside encounter. Let's walk through a realistic scenario that can escalate quickly. You're stopped at night. You're tired. You're irritated. The officer approaches. You begin searching for your wallet and insurance card. Your shoulders move, your elbows shift, your hands disappear and reappear. You may be completely harmless, but from the officer's perspective, it may look like you are hiding something. Now add a firearm to that situation, and the officer's stress level rises immediately. Here's where many people make a mistake. They assume that simply saying they are carrying will calm everything down. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does the opposite. Now the officer must decide how to safely manage a firearm they cannot clearly see, carried by a person they do not know, during a dark roadside stop. That's when you may hear, "Step out of the vehicle, keep your hands visible, turn around for a quick pat down." If you were expecting only a ticket, that moment feels like everything suddenly changed. And this is where many gun owners become emotional. They feel disrespected. They feel treated like criminals. They want to argue, but arguing at that moment is the worst timing possible. The roadside is where you keep things calm and controlled. Legal disputes happen later. If this is helping you, imagine what you'll learn in the next video about the 5 words that can protect you when an officer asks about your firearm. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because that next video could prevent you from saying the wrong thing under pressure. Now let's focus specifically on drivers, because driver behavior triggers most of what happens next. When you're the driver, you set the tone of the stop. Your passengers usually mirror your energy. If you stay calm, they stay calm. If you act angry, they become bold. If you speak quickly, they start talking quickly too. If you carry on your body while driving, assume there is always a chance the officer might notice. Your shirt may shift. Your seatbelt may move your cover garment. Your holster might print. Or you might live in a state where disclosure is required. I'm not telling you what your state requires. Laws vary widely. I am telling you to know your state rules before driving. Even in states with no duty to inform, the firearm can still become part of the stop. If you choose to inform the officer, the way you communicate matters. The worst move is saying, "I have a gun," while reaching toward it. Even if you are only trying to point it out, that movement can immediately create fear. A better approach is to keep your hands still and visible while speaking calmly. You want your body language to say, "No surprises." Here's a simple phrase that keeps things calmer. "Officer, I want to let you know I am legally carrying. My hands will stay right here. How would you like to proceed?" Steed. Notice what this does. It gives information without movement. It shows respect without giving up rights. It invites clear instructions and reduces confusion. Now, let's talk about the glove box problem, because this is where responsible people often make avoidable mistakes. Many drivers keep their registration and insurance in the glove box. Many drivers also keep a firearm there. That combination creates stress because at some point you will likely be asked for your paperwork. If the firearm is in the same place, you've just created an officer safety moment. Here's an example. The officer asks for your registration. You say sure and quickly open the glove box. Inside, a handgun sits on top of the paperwork. Even if you never touch it, that visual alone can trigger an immediate reaction. Now you may hear, "Stop moving, step out of the vehicle, don't reach." You could be removed from the vehicle or temporarily handcuffed while the officer secures the firearm. Could you later argue, you did nothing wrong? Possibly. But you still experienced a high-stress stop, and so did your passengers. The smarter strategy is prevention. Keep your paperwork somewhere separate from your firearm. That one decision can keep the stop calmer. Now let's talk about passengers, because Arizona v. Johnson is specifically a passenger case, and passengers misunderstand this constantly. If you're the passenger, you might assume the stop isn't about you. You might think you can use your phone freely. You might think you can step out to stretch. You might think you can walk toward a nearby store. That mindset can create problems. During a traffic stop, you are not free to leave. You are part of the stop. If you carry as a passenger, you also need to think about how your movements appear. Reaching under the seat, twisting to grab a bag, or digging into a pocket can look like reaching for a weapon, even when it isn't. Quick legal note. This is educational information, not legal advice. Always consult a qualified attorney for your specific situation. Now let's talk about the phrase a reasonable suspicion. It sounds complicated, but it's actually straightforward. It means the officer can point to specific facts that caused concern. It is a lower standard than probable cause. Probable cause suggests a crime likely occurred. Reasonable suspicion suggests something appears off and safety needs to be checked. The challenge for gun owners is that normal stress reactions can become those of facts. Your voice may shake. You may speak too quickly. You may avoid eye contact or make too much eye contact. Even if you are innocent, those behaviors can be interpreted as warning signs. That's why your strongest tool is calm, predictable behavior. Now here's something that may sound blunt, but it's accurate. The roadside is not a debate stage. It is not a courtroom. It is not a courtroom. It is not a comment section. It is a safety environment. And courts have repeatedly stated that officers may take steps to reduce risk during traffic stops. So the winning approach is simple. Get through the stops safely and respectfully, then handle any legal issues later if necessary. Here are 3 common mistakes that turn legal carry into serious problems. Mistake 1. Moving your hands without permission. Mistake 2. Storing your firearm in the same place as your paperwork. Mistake 3. Allowing passengers to talk and move as if they are not part of the stop. Let's paint a realistic example. The driver stays calm, but the passenger is talkative. The passenger interrupts repeatedly. The passenger jokes about guns. The passenger casually says, "We're carrying," like it's funny. Now the officer is managing 2 people instead of 1. The officer is watching 4 hands instead of 2. At that moment, the officer may feel the scene is not fully controlled. That's exactly when officers begin separating people, ordering occupants out, and conducting pat-downs. Now this is where things become even more important to understand. Arizona v. Johnson also removes another common myth. Some people believe that if an officer asks them to step out of the vehicle, they can simply refuse because they think it's their right. But Supreme Court rulings allow officers to order both drivers and passengers out of the vehicle during a lawful traffic stop. So if your plan is to refuse that instruction, you are likely setting up a conflict that you will lose in the moment. This does not mean you do not have rights. It means timing matters. The correct place to challenge a legal issue is later, with an attorney in a controlled environment. The wrong place is on the shoulder of a road with traffic moving past and adrenaline running high. By the way, about 73% of people watching right now aren't subscribed. Don't fall into that group. Join a community of gun owners who stay informed with clear, real-world legal updates. Click subscribe because in the next video we'll break down exactly what to say and what not to say to avoid the most common self-created mistakes. Now let's talk about the part most people don't want to hear. Even if you do everything correctly, you may still be frisked. You may still be temporarily disarmed during the stop. You may still be asked to step out of the vehicle. That can happen even when you are not doing anything illegal because the law allows officers to take safety steps when certain conditions exist. So your goal should not be, "I will never be inconvenienced." Your goal should be, "I will never be misunderstood as a threat." That mindset changes how you prepare to carry in a vehicle. First, think carefully about firearm placement. On-body carry while seated can become complicated during a stop. If the firearm is on your strong side hip, the seatbelt may trap access. If it's appendix carry, repeated adjustments to your belt may make the officer uncomfortable. If the firearm is inside a bag, the bag itself becomes the focus of attention. None of these methods are automatically wrong, but each requires planning. Second, think about where your hands go. The safest default position is simple. Hands visible on the steering wheel, with no reaching until the officer gives instructions. This may sound overly cautious. That's exactly the point. Predictable behavior keeps the situation calm. Third, think about what you say. Many people talk too much during traffic stops. Extra details often create extra questions. Long explanations increase the chance of contradictions, either from you or from your passengers. and longer stops naturally create more opportunities for tension. Now let's address traveling with a firearm, because this is where responsible people often run into unexpected legal problems. You might be fully legal in your home state. You might have a valid permit, but firearm laws change across state lines. Some states regulate how a firearm must be stored. Some regulate whether it can be loaded. Some regulate magazine capacity. Some enforce special restrictions around locations like schools or government buildings. There's no realistic way to cover every state rule in one video, but there is one smart habit that prevents most problems. Before crossing state lines with a firearm, check the laws of every state you plan to enter. Not what a friend told you, not what a comment online claims. Actual official sources or guidance from a qualified attorney. Here's a practical scenario. You're driving through a state you don't live in. You store your firearm in the center console because that's how you normally carry it home. You get pulled over for speeding. The officer asks for your registration. You open the console, and the officer immediately sees the firearm. Now, the officer has two separate concerns. One, safety. Two, whether the firearm is legal under that state's laws. Even if you had no intention of breaking any law, the situation may suddenly become complicated. That's why preparation matters. Here are simple habits that reduce risk. Keep your paperwork separate from firearm storage. Secure the firearm so it does not move. While driving, tell passengers to stay calm and keep their hands visible. Move slowly and ask before reaching for anything. These small decisions help prevent this, said the Vietnam officer, from interpreting normal behavior as a threat. Now let's talk about another common trap. People trying to end the stop early. You've probably seen videos where someone repeatedly asks, "Am I being detained?" and then begins moving around or attempting to walk away. Here's the problem. During a lawful traffic stop, you are detained for the duration of that stop. The stop ends when the officer finishes the process and clearly releases you. If you start acting like you are free to leave before that point, the situation can escalate quickly. If you want to ask a rights-based question, keep your voice calm and avoid sudden movement. Also understand that even polite legal questions can sometimes increase tension during a roadside encounter. Your priority should always be keeping the situation steady. Keep your voice calm. Keep your hands visible. Allow the stop to finish. Then decide what steps to take afterward if necessary. This type of legal information can change over time. New court decisions or state law updates can reshape how traffic stops work. That's why staying informed matters. Subscribe now, because in the next video, we'll go through a simple checklist you can use before you even start your vehicle. Now, let's move into the final section. The part that brings everything together. The case Arizona v. Johnson is a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court of the United States, stating that a lawful traffic stop temporarily detains both the driver and all passengers. During that stop, an officer is allowed to take reasonable safety measures. And if the officer develops reasonable suspicion that a person is armed and dangerous, that officer may conduct a limited frisk for weapons. This is the rule every person who carries a firearm in a vehicle needs to understand. But before we close, there's one more reality that many people overlook. Even when you do everything correctly, you may still be asked to step out. You may still be frisked. You may still be temporarily disarmed during the stop. That can happen without any illegal behavior on your part, because the law allows certain safety precautions. So the goal is not to avoid all inconvenience. The goal is to avoid being perceived as a threat. That mindset changes how you approach carrying in a vehicle. Start by thinking carefully about where your firearm is located. If you carry on your body while seated, access and visibility become important factors. A strong side carry position may be restricted by the seatbelt. Appendix carry may draw attention if you repeatedly adjust your position. If the firearm is stored inside a bag, that bag may become the focus of officer attention. None of these methods are automatically incorrect, but each requires awareness and planning. Next, think about hand placement. The safest default during any traffic stop is simple. Keep your hands visible, preferably on the steering wheel, and avoid reaching for anything until the officer gives clear instructions. This approach may feel overly cautious, but predictable behavior reduces uncertainty, and uncertainty is what often escalates encounters. Then think about communication. Many people talk too much during traffic stops. They offer extra details that create extra questions. Long explanations can introduce inconsistencies, especially if passengers begin adding their own comments.